Hello, ghost hunters. Let's talk about incense. If you're a brave ghost hunter, then you're probably very experienced with the incense. But before we get into these things, let's clear the air. I've been playing Phasmophobia since release, and I've always called them smudges, or smudge sticks. So that's going to take some time for me to break that habit. Just know that if I refer to them as smudges at any time during this video, I am talking about the incense, which was recently renamed. So now that I've clarified that, let's get into the tiers. First up is the tried and true, the Tier 1 incense, which looks like the smudge stick we had prior to the Ascension update. As with all incenses, players must have an igniter, matches or one of the two lighters, in their inventory for this item to work. If you are using an igniter with limited uses, it must have at least one use. Unless you've changed your keybinds, to light this item, players must have it in their hand and then press their right mouse button, or the primary use button if you have rebounded. It has a range of 3 meters and will burn for about 5 seconds. It is consumable, so once it's lit, it must be repurchased for future games. The Tier 2 incense is a bit bulkier than the Tier 1. This incense is slightly different than the Tier 1. It does burn 1 second longer, for a total of 6 seconds. It has a wider range of 4 meters and it is also consumable. But the major difference for this item is that it slows ghosts for 5 seconds if used during a hunt. The Tier 3 incense is definitely different in appearance than the other incenses. It has a large range of 5 meters and burns for longer at 7 seconds. What's interesting about this item is that it is not a consumable, so players who bring these to hunts and survive will have them available on the next hunt, even if they are used. Also, it has a unique trait in that when using it during a hunt, ghosts will be halted for 5 seconds. While incense is most often lit while being held, it can also be lit while on the ground. I can think of exactly 0 instances where this is useful, but it does work this way. If you can think of a way that this could be used that is actually useful to players, then let me know in the comments. If you are simply trying to use the incense to cleanse the area where the ghost is to prevent a hunt or complete an objective, keep in mind that this does have some minor effects on the ghost. When cleansing the area, this will increase ghost activity slightly. Using an incense on a ghost during a hunt or in its favorite room will prevent the ghost from hunting for 90 seconds, with some exceptions. There are actually several ghosts who are affected differently by the incense. First, that sneaky demon. If you've used an incense and you haven't determined your ghost type, be aware that the demon is not affected by incense for nearly as long as other ghosts. Incense will last only 60 seconds on a demon. However, you could use this information to identify your ghost. The spirit is also affected differently by the incense. When cleansed with incense during a hunt or in its room, the spirit is prevented from hunting for 180 seconds. So if you've cleansed and you're not getting hunts for longer periods of time, you may be able to identify your ghost as a spirit. If your ghost happens to be a Yurei, it will be returned to its room and cannot roam outside of its room for 60 seconds. This obviously will not include ghost events which are directed at players outside of the room. I'm not sure if this means a Yurei must be cleansed while it's outside of its room and roaming, or if by cleansing its room it is returned. If you happen to know the answer to this, let me know in the comments. And finally, the Moroi is highly affected by the incense during a hunt. If you cleanse the Moroi while it is hunting, it will be confused for longer than other ghosts. Keep in mind that by using incense, you can prevent a ghost from a normal hunt. However, if you use a cursed item during the cleansing period, it cannot prevent a cursed hunt, and thus, the cleansing will be ineffective. It also cannot stop a hunt already in progress. When the ghost is already hunting, players can complete multiple objectives. You probably know that you can prevent a hunt by cleansing the ghost area, but this objective can also be completed during the hunt by cleansing the ghost while it is hunting. There are also objectives for repelling a ghost with incense during a hunt and escaping the ghost during a hunt. While escaping the ghost does not require an incense, it is much easier to do if you have one. The best way to do all 3 of these objectives is to plan ahead with a hiding spot nearby. Stand out of your hiding spot and wait for the ghost to approach. When the ghost heads toward the visible player, cleanse when the ghost is in range, and then quickly get to your hiding spot. The escape objective will not be checked off until all players have survived the hunt. It is not recommended to do this from a hiding spot, as the ghost will recall that it last saw players in that spot. Here is where some things get confusing for players. When cleansing a ghost during a hunt, the timer for the hunt cooldown period starts from the moment of the first incense use. So if you and a teammate both use your incenses, just know that the timing for the next hunt is based off the first incense and not the second. This is not true for other effects such as the slowdown of the ghost or the ghost that is frozen in place. Each incense will reset the timer for those effects. I'm not sure if this is intended or a bug, but just know that there is not a reset of the hunt timer for a second incense. Because I make a lot of shorts content covering phasmophobia, I've discovered that many players are not aware that when cleansing during a hunt, players can walk through a ghost without dying. As long as your incense is still burning, the ghost cannot kill you. Keep in mind that this period is only 5 to 7 seconds for most ghosts, so you won't have long to make your escape. When the ghost is cleansed, it will walk in a random direction, and this can unfortunately include the direction that you take. Because of this, it may feel like your incense did not work, as the ghost may come out of its blind phase while you are still heading to your hiding spot. For this reason, it's wise to choose a hiding spot that is closer and to plan ahead as much as possible. While blinded by the incense, the ghost cannot detect players and will not be able to see which direction players take to hide. This may be an unpopular opinion, but of the 3 tiers of incense, my favorite is by far the tier 1. This is mostly because slowing a ghost makes it more difficult to determine ghost speed, and because halting the ghost often results in a ghost that does not move away from my hiding spot during a hunt. Many times I use incense as a way to prevent a hunt, cleansing mostly during a hunt and not far from my hiding spot. Halting the ghost very near my hiding area is typically very unwise. So while the tier 2 and the tier 3 have some very niche uses, for the most part they are not ideal for most situations. And while 1 or 2 seconds of time could be nice, it rarely makes that much of a difference. So I recommend the tier 1 incense for all hunts and players, although admittedly the tier 3 incense is much more fun. Do you agree with my assessment? Are you too struggling to call it incense and not smudge? Do you have specific situations where you use incense a specific way? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, remember to like and subscribe, and as always, happy hunting! Do you agree with my assessment of the incense?